That's the rock. We've realized the self is actually that higher entity, that which controls God. You're supposed to birth yourself into these realities and then kill yourself out of those realities. That's the only escape from the matrix. It's that everything here is dying. Everything here is corrupted. Everything, even your beautiful sunset, is a corruption of the real sun. What is your body to your soul? A vehicle of travel. What are the things that you do that are not for money? So we speak about the independent phenomenon of self-actualization. You know, no rules. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm also going to show you the depth of my power.
Greetings, one and all. Peace and power to you all, and I welcome you all to another segment of Foundational Friday on enlightenment and transformation. As many of you know by now, I am Chief Yuya, Chief Jegna of the Anu Spiritual Order, head instructor of the Sadula House Spiritual Center. And Foundational Fridays is our opportunity to share some of the calculations, thoughts, philosophies, and opinions of the Anu Spiritual Order. And I want to thank all of you who have entered into this space, whether it be for the first time or, you know, or if this is a regular Friday night assemblage for you. Welcome to all of you, especially for those of you. There's one person in particular I'm thinking of. She probably knows who she is, who always takes time to comment on the videos and share your perspectives and your ideas and stuff like that. I want to thank you as well. It is duly noted and duly appreciated, because coming into what we're calling a new era, but I mean this era has been going on for some time, where it sometimes seems as though you're speaking into the abysmal nothingness of cyberspace. It's always helpful when individuals share feedback and kind of not just doesn't always have to be an agreement. Sometimes it is, as long as it's respectful, of course, but just to let you know how things are resonating with them. It's powerful. And, you know, I'm going to share some feedback with you all, share some of my own feedback from my own experience. Last night, if many of you may be familiar, I did a segment on ethos on Thunderground Thursday. And, you see, I'm going to show you how things work sometimes. Some of you know how things work, but I'm going to share. So last night, after I did the segment, I said, yeah, I feel like I'm going to take, I had some work to do after the segment, but I felt like I needed to cleanse my palate for a second. You know, sometimes you guys hear me talk about that, cleansing the mental palate. You know, sometimes you have to kind of switch gears just for a moment to kind of refresh. You know, it's almost like when you go to a wine tasting and they give you the strawberries to cleanse your tongue palate. So sometimes I do that too when I'm doing certain work, or I may do a segment. Let's say if I'm teaching real heavy with a lot of spiritual stuff, to kind of reset my mind, I'll go left. Maybe I'll watch a comedy, you know, or I might just take a walk or have a conversation with someone who I know is just not going to be on that. Then I'll come back to my work. So last night I decided to pop in a movie I had. Yes, pop in. I'm still on DVDs. I know. Talk about coming into the new age, right? And I know DVDs. Apparently, I found out recently that like I'm way behind the times because I still use DVDs. And I just got put up on Netflix like a month ago. So now I see what the big deal is. Everybody's been telling me about, well, you still ain't on Netflix for years. And I'm like, I don't understand what the thing is. I don't need to rent a video. You know, I didn't know how it really worked. So Netflix is cool too. But I'm not really a big watcher of stuff. You know, sometimes when I'm working, I'll have something playing in the background. I usually like to have a speech or a documentary or something, sometimes in the background, just to, get me in the mood, or maybe to provoke different thoughts and to explore some alternative thinking. But usually the documentaries and stuff that I watch, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing, So, like, I saw one recently on asexuals. You say, what does asexuality have to do with Anu? Nothing, But sometimes those are the type of things that I'll watch or have playing in the background just to keep my mind spongy, keep new stuff swirling around, A lot of times, unfortunately, as we get older, we make the really ridiculous assumption that we lose capacity for mental expansion. And even neuroscientists tell us that it's actually the opposite. Our ability to learn more increases as we get older. And that's kind of the farce. We talk about the ethos and culture. It's one of the farces of the idea of retiring. I knew people, we don't retire. We create and we create and we create until we can't create anymore, until we fall over our creation tools. That's what Anu does. We don't retire. What do you do when you retire? You wait to die. Or you look for something else. I'm bored. And the reason why most of the time you're bored is because you have maybe spent 40 or 50 or 60 years, some depending on when you retire, learning and growing and using your knowledge to earn revenue. So your mind is like primed and revved up to learn. And then you retire and you stop and your mind is like, wait. It's like a frisky cat. No, I still want more. And then you have to train it to be still. And really, your ability for experiential creation is highest at that time. When you're younger, your capacity for conceptual creation is very high. You're mainly dealing with concepts and things are thrown at you, and it's all these wild moments. As you get older, you don't have the same capacity for conceptual creation. That's what sometimes people will talk to you about things like, I don't know nothing about that, But your experiential, your experience, and your willingness to actually do things and to get things done. You notice as you get older, you don't like talking as much or hearing talking as much. Come on, all right, enough talking. Let's just, either we're going to do this or we're not. You notice you get to that point. That's because certain aspects of your psyche begin to grow differently. And you're now about experience. So it's a side note. But yeah, so what happens is last night, after I did the show, I popped in again, a DVD, and the title of it was The Spirit. Okay. And you guys may have seen it. I mean, I typically, very rare that I watch stuff as soon as it comes out. I usually like to watch things after they come out, unless it's something that I'm just like, I got to see that. But that's so rare with me. I usually watch it later because sometimes those movies are timed with other spiritual events, and I don't want to be wrapped up in the ritual. So I'll say, man, I'll watch that a couple years later or a year later, when the moment has passed. But so I don't remember when this movie came out, but I'm sure it's nothing new. It was sitting in my shelf for a while, and I never looked at it. I just never had the inkling to. And it's kind of like in the vein of like Sin City. If any of you have seen Sin City, that style, that heavy CGI style, where it even has like a kind of a throwback to like the Dick Tracy crime films. Some of you may not know who Dick Tracy is, but it's like old detective films, right? But they're using a lot of heavy computer generated graphics to like just give it a nice little real whimsical twist to it. And I believe the Spirit actually is based off of a comic strip, right? But it came out a while ago. I know it did. And in the movie, you had Samuel Jackson. He played basically the nemesis. His name was the Octopus, right? And then you had Gabriel Macht. He played the spirit, and he was basically like the spirit of this place called Central City, right? And Eva Mendes was in it. She played I don't know, San Serif, something like that. Yeah, Eva Mendes. So she was in it, and it was basically, I mean, I don't have to get into the top because the plot doesn't even matter based on what I'm getting ready to tell you, so it doesn't even matter. So, I mean, you can watch it if you feel like it, but I'm not selling the movie. I just grabbed it because it was called The Spirit, and I said, it's interesting. You know, obviously, you can imagine my interest based on what I do. And he was basically the spirit of Central City. And, you know, there was some other elements in it. Of course, there's always something to decode. But I'm not even trying to decode that movie right now. That's not even what it's about. But anyway, so, I mean, there was an element of genetic cloning in it and manipulation, right? And there were these characters, right? I don't even remember their names, but if you ever watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And they were like the henchmen for the octopus, okay? But they were identical. So I don't want to say twins, but they were all identical. They were cloned, and they had some interesting names. Now, you remember what I was talking about last night? I talked about ethos, and then I said, well, ethos leads to pathos, but before ethos, it should be logos, and then after that, it's kairos. So it's logos, ethos, pathos, and kairos, Greek terms, right? So there were 3 henchmen in the very beginning of the film who killed one of the like a police officer. This is like right in the beginning of the film. Guess what those henchmen's names were? Ethos, pathos, and logos. You see, I couldn't orchestrate that myself. I couldn't orchestrate that. So this movie, as soon as I turn it on, I sit back, you know, I'll pop it in. I say, okay, what's this thing, man? And I'm already feeling like I'm probably not even gonna like it because spiritually I haven't been drawn to it yet. It's been sitting there. I'm like, let me just throw it in, you know, just to kind of take my mind to something else for an hour before I get started on my next task. And I see they had these black shirts with white writing on them, and one was named Ethos, one was Pathos, and one was Logos. I said, okay, all right. So I guess I'm supposed to watch this tonight, and I guess I was supposed to do that show yesterday, and or tonight, and I guess I was supposed to get those phone calls, right? So it's not over, folks. So while I'm watching it, right, I'm currently, and this is related to the friend of mine came over to me, made fun of me about my DVDs. As he saw him, he was like, "What, you got a DVD collection?" I'm like, "It's not a collection." But he was like, "Why do you have DVDs?" I was like, "To watch," you know. And then he explained the whole, we don't do DVDs anymore. I'm like, whatever. I know a lot of people who do DVDs. You know, people buy our DVDs that we sell, so people are doing DVDs. So, and Scarlett Johansson was in it too. I mean, it doesn't matter, but you know, I'm used to when I'm talking about a movie, I got to give you the characters. So anyway, I am currently in the process of digitizing all my movies, the ones I want, and because I have a lot of good stuff, a lot of good, hard to find films. I had a lot of good stuff on VHS that I had to digitize, you know, stuff you just can't really find anymore. So I'm going through the same process with my books. I have a ridiculously huge book collection, and a lot of my books are not even displayed. I have them in boxes, you know, in my garage, like, you know. So I said, it's kind of ridiculous. I'm not even, you know, someone else can use these books at this point. Anybody who feels like still reading books, I like the spirit that they give off, because books have an energy to them. I used to use books to chase people out of my home. No joke. I used to do that. Long story, but you can use books for all sorts of rituals. But so I said, I need to start seeing which ones of these books that I already have as ebooks, or I have the PDFs of, and then just box them up and either donate them to an independent school, or I said what I'll do is just start giving them away. So of course people are now seeing them. They're coming by my house and seeing the boxes. You giving these away? I'm getting all of that. So I've been having to tell people, no, don't touch them. So I had like 4 copies of the Iliad, right? One of my favorites. And after I watched the movie, right, I looked over in the book and I saw like 2 of the copies sitting on top, and I got like nice hardbound copies of it. But I'm like, they gotta go. They're just taking up space. I don't read them often enough to justify them collecting dust and space in my home. So I'll give them to someone who enjoys Grecian literature as much as I do, or maybe just wants to learn about it, right? We're talking about ethos, right? We're talking about culture. And I know many of you might say, well, what does Greek culture have to do with you? You're an African man. Yeah, I know. I study everything. You guys should know that by now. I've told you that from the very beginning. But studying doesn't equate to worship. It means knowing. I want to know what's around me. I want to know my terrain. I want to know the pathology of the individuals who seem to try to make themselves present in my world, who seem to be so content or intent to intrude and invade upon my living process. So if I understand that Greek culture is the mother / father of Western culture, and Western culture has created some of the greatest intrusions into my world, then I want to understand Greek culture. What makes you feel like you need to do that? So I spent a lot of time, especially as a youth, studying and learning about the Greeks. I learned that when I learned about some of their practices, I realized they ain't call it Greece for nothing. Greece was probably like their main staple that they imported. If you learn anything about their sexual custom, I'll leave that alone. But anyway, so there was a passage that I thought about, because obviously after the movie went off, I'm thinking ethos, pathos, logos. Okay, you know what? I need to do a teaching series on that. I already know now. Now I already covered ethos. Now let me, start doing the next one. So when it comes to like lectures or classes or workshops, I kind of do a Jay-Z Biggie thing where I pretty much do it all in my head. So I just kind of play it out and okay, boom, 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 and I start cutting it up and how I want to present it. So I'm doing that. I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, come from this angle, talk about this, talk about that. I'm breaking it down by minutes. Like, okay, the first 5 minutes I'll talk about this. Okay, so I got it. I'm doing my Rain Man thing in my head. And I look over and I see the Iliad. Spirit tells me to grab it. Boom, I grab it and I'm like, I bet you I'm going to see something related to ethos, right? Now, remember last night I spoke about also the connection to Ethiopia when we use the term ethos, right? So then I'm thinking about the Ethiopian connection. And I was like, you know what? Because his spirit has been kind of tapping me on my shoulder the past couple months like, yo, you studied a lot about Ethiopia as well. You need to start speaking on that culture. And sometimes I don't speak about Ethiopia as much because I spent a lot of time immersed in Rastafarian culture for many years of my life, many years. So Ethiopia was always spoken about so much that sometimes I feel like, I've heard enough. But then I forget, well, I haven't necessarily shared all of my insights with the family as it pertains to everything that I may have been inundated with. So I remembered this passage in the Iliad as it related to Ethiopia. And I said, I wonder if that passage has anything to do with ethos, if it's in there, right? And I said, that would be a cool tie-in. I knew it was in book 6 of the Iliad. If any of you have ever read it, you know it's cut up by books, 1 through, 6, 5, 20, whatever. So I knew it was in book 6. So I said, okay, I'll find it. I know I will. So I'm looking, and I found the passage that was a passage that I'll tell you, when we talk about studying different things. Years ago, when I read the Iliad, and I think I read the Iliad when I was, I'll tell you in a second. I must have been like 10 and a half, 11, around there, because I remember I started reading Shakespeare when I was 11, and I read the Iliad before Shakespeare because the Iliad got me interested in that type of. It was either the Odyssey, the Iliad. I think I might have read them together, but it got me interested in that form of literature, and I wanted to learn more. So then I had gotten this Shakespeare collection from a flea market, actually, and had like Hamlet and Macbeth and Catcher in the Rye, a whole bunch of other stuff, Romeo and Juliet. But anyway, so this particular passage, the reason I'm sharing all of that is that this was, you may say, the things that wake us up, right? And sometimes what wakes us up is it's different for each person. It may not necessarily be something that is a part of our own particular ethos, but when you learn others' pathology, sometimes it may scare you so far away from what they're doing, or it may give you a more historical and originating understanding of how the world perceived you. Because as I often say to people, especially people who have been used and abused, which is a lot of us, that typically people see us before we see ourselves. No different than, and I always use this example, but you understand, a lot of us, the girl who began to develop, the little girl, 5th or 6th grade, who developed before all the other girls who didn't know she was developing. Now, everybody else notices, even the teachers notice it. Everybody notices. Everybody's worried because she's still hanging from the monkey bars upside down and letting her dress fall over her face. Or she's running and wants to play kickball with everybody, doesn't realize, okay, you need a bra now. But the rest of us see. I'm seeing the boys and even the jealous girls. So a lot of times people see you before you see yourselves, and unfortunately, they'll use your ignorance of self as a means to take advantage of you because you don't really know what you're bringing. So it's sometimes it's good to even learn what other people see, others' perception. Sometimes if you can do it in the right light. So this particular passage was one I remember that kind of made me think a little bit, about, this is what they were saying before, what they're saying now. And I'll read it to you. Grab my book before I give it away. So it's gonna serve some purpose before it goes into the donation heap. But okay, book 6. Here we go. Through wandering skies, enormous stalked along. Not he that shakes the solid earth so strong. With giant pride, at Jove's high throne he stands, and brandished round him all his 100 hands. The affrighted gods confessed their awful Lord. They dropped the fetters, trembled and adored. This goddess, this to his remembrance call, embrace his knees at his tribunal fall. Conjure him far to drive the Grecian train, to hurl them headlong to their fleet and main, to heap the shores with copious death, and bring the Greeks to know the curse of such a king. Let Agamemnon lift his haughty head over all his wide dominion of the dead, and mourn in blood that ever he durst disgrace, the boldest warrior of the Grecian race. Unhappy son, fair Thetis thus replies, while tears celestial trickle from her eyes. Why have I borne thee with a mother's throes, to fate's averse and nursed for future woes? So short a space the light of heaven to view, so short a space, and filled with sorrow too. O might a parent's careful wish prevail, far from Ilion should thy vessel sail, and thou from camps remote the danger shun, which now, alas, too nearly threats my son. Yet, what I can to move thy suit, I'll go to great Olympus crowned with fleecy snow. Meantime, secure within thy ships, from far behold the field, not mingle in the war. The sire of gods and all the ethereal train, on the warm limits of the farthest main, now mix with mortals, nor disdain to grace the feast of Ethiopia's blameless race. Okay, now I'm going to read that last line because that's really the key. And that was the one that, when I was reading, made me put my thumb in the book and close it like, huh? So I'll read it again. That last line, really the last two is the key. The sire of gods and all the ethereal train. Now, whenever you hear Grecians in their literature speak about the sire of gods, they're speaking about Zeus. Okay, the one who sired or created the gods, right? So the sire of gods and all the ethereal train. So the ethereal train would be like all the other gods, basically like the heavens. So Zeus and everything that comes along with Zeus, right? On the warm limits of the farthest main, now mix with mortals, nor disdain to grace the feast of Ethiopia's blameless race. So one of the things that you understand, because you got to remember, if you do remember, in the late 1800s, there was a lot of literature, up until really like the 1930s, maybe even up into the 40s, it was said that the Ethiopians were white. So the same image that you have of the Ethiopians in terms of like how, Egypt was white coated was also put on the Ethiopians as well. But I mean, they knew that wasn't the case. Just like, Egypt, no one's going to be in the sand in the heat that long and, have blonde hair and blue eyes. It's just not, realistic. Just like I wouldn't be in the snow forever and have woolly hair, frizzy hair and dark skin. It's, but in any event, so that particular phrase, it revealed the sentiment, because I remembered as a youth having books that depicted Egyptians and Ethiopians as fair skinned. I remembered that. So when I read that, or not me having, but seeing, I should say, let me correct that. So when I read that, it caused me to dig a little deeper, because I'm saying, well, why are the Ethiopians singled out? And I then learned that Ethiopia or Ethiopian was translated in Greek as the dusky faced ones. Now, if you know what dusky is, dusky means dark, similar to what like Sally Hemings was called. It's the woman who Thomas Jefferson raped and, sired children by. She was called Dusky Sally. And dusky again is like dark, or ruddy would be like red, but dark. And so once I figured out, I found out, okay, the dusky face one. So these were dark people. So this book, I'm looking at the illustrations, and I think it might have been an old encyclopedia set that I remember seeing the Ethiopians, and so I was like, okay, well, this is off, you know. Once I found that word, so really it was true to the original. And was funny because I used to read a lot of, again, Grecian literature because I was interested in studying them. There were certain phrases that I learned that were significant to Ethiopians, which gave clues. There was one phrase that they used to use, which was kind of like, it was like a proverb, and it was to wash the Ethiopian white, which is another one of my big clues, to wash the Ethiopian white. I'm like, what the heck is to wash the Ethiopian white? And what that meant was like let's say if somebody owed you money that you couldn't pay, that you had no way of paying, they would say like, well, it's to wash the Ethiopian white, meaning like, I can't make the Ethiopian white. The Ethiopian is like, you can't wash their black skin to the point that they become white. You see, or if I had to move a boulder or something, that's an impossible task, basically, was related to this idea of to wash the Ethiopian white, which I thought was funny. I remember as a youth reading that and saying, and then looking at the other book, I'm like, but they did. It's in the book. They're white. I'm pretty sure it was an encyclopedia set. Sometimes I wish back then, I wish that technology was to the place where, because I mean, we didn't have scanners and stuff back then, let alone a digital camera. I mean, I could have took a regular picture, but if I was thinking properly, I would have taken pictures of some of these, because I had a really nice old encyclopedia set that an elder had given to me when I was a child, because she saw that I liked to read all the time, and she spent a lot of money on this set. I had two sets, actually. I had one that she ordered for me, and then I had another one that was like from the 30s. It was really old. And I mean, no offense to those of you who were born in the 30s, but but yeah, it was a nice old set, and it had a lot of old misinformation in it. But that misinformation is good to study a lot of times too, because you get to understand the mind that is built in a person. But we got rid of all of those encyclopedia sets when we found out you can get all of that on a CD-ROM. Yeah, right. Progress. So anyway, and imagine how many years ago that was. And I was like, yeah, I don't need that no more. I can get on CD-ROMs. We're still going back 20-something years. But yeah, in any event, so the idea, like I said, that proverb was always very interesting to me. And just when we're dealing with ethos and we're understanding sometimes, and again, you got to understand that this Grecian culture is the mother culture of Western culture. You had people who like Herodotus, many of you have heard of, and Sophocles and Diodorus, who literally worshipped the Ethiopians. They worshipped them, you see. And there were a lot of attempts at that point when you're dealing with ancient Kushites, and even when you're dealing with like the lower regions of Nubia, there were a lot of attempts for other people to become those people. This is also documented through miscegenation. And what they would find is that I know it sounds, I gotta laugh now, but what they were trying to do was to miscegenate them, to make them, not understanding the strength of the African gene, that no, you're going to get absorbed into this. So that's where a lot of those proverbs came from. Again, like can to wash the Ethiopian white, it's impossible, and back then Ethiopia was directly related to Kemet, or as many of them call, because they try to tell you that they called it Egypt and then Kemet was it, but many of the Greeks did call it Kemet. I remember reading that word, but they didn't call it Kemet exactly. They called it Chemi, Chemi. Okay, so And again, I'm not giving the Greeks any undue props. What I'm just saying is that understanding the ethos of the culture or the character of a people helps you to understand a lot of times what it is that you're fighting, what it is that you're standing against, and even some of the slick ways that that ethos is hidden within the things that we do that are hidden from us. You know, a lot of stuff is hidden. You know, a lot of stuff presents itself to be much more innocent than it truly is, as sinister as it actually is. You know, and a lot of us have learned that just through like our movie breakdowns and listening to certain music and art, and we realize, wow, they're saying this in that movie or saying that, and you know, certain phrases that were used towards certain groups of people, and just like that, there was a more sinister plot at hand. And not to just get caught off into conspiracy theories, because there are conspiracies, there are active conspiracies, they're not just theories. I mean, some of them are pretty much right there in your face, you know. And I mean, when we speak about ethos, one of the things that I want to make clear to you guys is that when you begin to study, like I said, the ethos is your character, it's your culture. It doesn't mean that it's not mutable. In fact, it is mutable. It does change, but you want to be aware and on top of the change. You know, you don't want to be dragged behind, because culture, as I've said in my book, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, culture is living and breathing and is always going to fight for its survival. It's not going to let you just stamp it out. It's not going to let you play it out. It's not going to play itself out. You think it is, because you may hold on to one aspect of the culture, but the culture is going to march and move forward. You know, it's going to find different ways to nestle itself into the consciousness of other experiences, or the consciousness in other people's, so that way it still has a place. Like we have in this, well, many countries, but particularly this country, we have a culture of chattel slavery, you know. And that chattel slavery, the culture that was present, was more important than the actual physical process that associated with the physical process. Was in there, take the mind. Body doesn't matter, you know, it'll follow the mind. So the new slavery has become consumerism. You know, I got to get closer to master's porch. I got to wear master's leftovers. You know, so that idea is like, well, we don't care at this point if we take the chains off or not, because we know we've created a culture or a pathology based on the reasoning capabilities that we've removed, right? We now have created a certain pathology where we can mutate and transubstantiate this particular idea and concept into anything. We can make anything slavery. We can make you a slave to your phone. We can make you a slave to Netflix or to YouTube or to your television. We can present things to you that you feel like you just can't do without. A check, you know, that has a signature of somebody's name that is foreign to your own culture and identity. That makes you feel safer. That's a form of slavery. Now it's voluntary slavery, and I would never discredit or dismiss the ma'afa. I'm not discrediting that in one inch. It's a lot different than someone grabbing you up and putting some shackles on you, you know. And your movement towards freedom has to mirror and echo the sentiment of give me freedom or give me death. That's not the same as you deciding to make your own clothes. Like, no one's going to kill you for making your own clothes. No one's going to kill you for trying to start your own business. And I know many of you are like, well, I wouldn't say that, brother, because some people have. What about Ron Brown and the brother who started the Ma'at group? Yeah, you're right. Some people have been taken out behind what their movements to freedom meant for other people. Some people are voices of influence, and what they do reverberate out and upset the status quo. You know, I mean, remember, as you're building something, you're always destroying something else, and it's just on different scales. That's all. But as you're building, you're destroying. Like right now, I found out there's a 125th Street. They're getting ready to build a Whole Foods on 125th Street in Harlem. Imagine what that's going to destroy. Now they're just building, but you know it's going to happen now, because that makes a lot of other people comfortable being there. Like, oh, well, we got a Whole Foods, we're good now. And it's going to remove those smaller mom and pops health stores that are on 125th. You know, like your Uptown juice bars and your Watkins, you know, where we go to get our shakes and our supplements and our herbs and stuff like that. Because as you build something, you destroy something. You know. And we're not speaking conspiracy. We're speaking very basic things, you know. But you got to remember, some people, they plan several generations in advance. So, I mean, from the moment that Magic Johnson Theater went up on 125th Street, something was already in action. Well, really, the moment that the neighborhood was destabilized with crack cocaine, there was a long-term plan, because they looked at those buildings and said, man, these are castles. All of these brownstones are mini castles. They practically qualify as mansions. How can we get these things? How can we get our hands on these big, beautiful, gorgeous buildings? You know, and we're not far from downtown and where the businesses are and things right here in Harlem. It's kind of easy. We just got to get the people out of here. Well, how long will it take? Oh, it's going to take about 30, 40 years. Not a problem. Because I'm all about paying it forward. You can't be successful in life unless you pay it forward. That was another axiom of the Greeks. They called it ergia. That's what it was, ergia. Could be pronouncing it wrong, but it was the investment in the mind, body, and spirit. The mind, body, and spirit. But the order was more like body, mind, spirit, and the investment went as such. And this was the formula for long life, or like kind of like their fountain of youth. They understood, you know, this particular investment, because, you know, keep in mind that the average life expectancy during the times of some of these quote unquote philosophers, these thieves, the average life expectancy during this time was only about 28 years. People only expect to live to 28. But when people started to invest in this formula, they would find that they were living 70 plus. For us today, that would be like, you know, that would be like somebody living to like 200 years old, you know, in comparison. Over 200 years, really, but, you know. So the idea of investment in the body was that basically you had to enjoy yourself. You had to enjoy life. You had to find opportunities to have a lot of fun, you know, to really become childlike almost, in a sense, to really enjoy yourself. The investment in the mind was your work that you did, you know, like that's why they say like work hard, or what is it? Play hard, work hard, or work hard, play hard, either one, right? That's where that idea came from. And then the third one in the spirit was the idea of charity, like giving so that you can ensure that future generations coming behind you can build on top of what you did. That's the donation, the charity, and doing works for society that uplifted and helped society. And that threefold formula was the key to long life. And many others have adopted it. They just call it something different. Jews have something similar as well. They have more than 3 points, but it's included in the same thing. You know, even speaking of that, when we talk about how things nestle and hide themselves within a culture, there's even when we talk about ethos, right? And like I said, it is changing. You know, your character changes. You know, you have your solid resonating frequencies, but they change over time. I'm sure even if you all listen to some of the earlier Foundational Friday shows and compare it with this one, I sound different. You know, I'm in a different place. I mean, we started the segments, I think, in 2010, something like that, 2011, 2010. So things have changed. I've changed. I've you know, transformed in many ways. Not to mention, I used to do those shows in the middle of the woods. So, you know, even my mind was another place. I would take my little netbook in my headset and I would just go sit. I have this favorite rock I like to go to, and a set of woods that I won't mention. And I used to just go sit on the rock and talk. That's how all of those earlier Orisha shows were done. You know, just me sitting in the woods talking. That's why the sound quality is so bad on them, you know. But obviously being in that environment puts you in a different state of mind, you know. But yeah, like I said, talking about the Jews, there was actually another Hebraic proverb that they used to say that we use to this day. A lot of people didn't know that's where it came from. Anyone has ever heard that term that a leopard cannot change its spots? You know, or you talk about a person's character, right? You say, oh, it ain't gonna change. People don't change. A leopard can't change their spots. That's where that came from. It came from the Hebrews. But I'll tell you how things nestle and hide themselves. A lot of times stuff is mangled and cut around. Like Goldberg becomes gold. Feinstein becomes fine. Silverstein becomes silver, you know. And the original phrase was, can the Ethiopian change his skin? Or can a leopard change his spots? So can an Ethiopian change his skin or a leopard change his spots? Became, can a leopard change his spots? You see how things are hidden? And all you got to do is dig a little bit. You read a little bit and you'll find it. That was the original phrase. You know, again, dealing with the taking the ethos, and, you know, the being the dusky face or the dark face one. But isn't it interesting that some of our original examples of Kemet, or definitions and translations of Kemet, was the land of the dark faces. Those with the dark faces. And then we have Ethiopia, or Ethiopia being the dusky face ones, or the dark face ones. You just got to dig a little bit sometimes. You'd be surprised what you find. And of course, then people translate Kemet as the land of the dark soil because of the fertile soil, you know. But you just got to lift stuff up a little bit. And you'll find it, because culture is not going to disappear. It's not going to let itself die. Just because you may go to Kemet now and you don't see that many dark faces doesn't mean that they're not there. They're there. You just got to go into some of the shrines, some of the images. You'll see images of ebos there. You'll see images of the priest there. You'll see new paint and old paint. That should tell you something right there. Stuff, why are they painting stuff over? What the heck was underneath this before? You know? And the same thing in Ethiopia. You see some of the earliest images, actually, of this Christ figure that everyone likes to talk about so much, with a fro. Yeah, nice little round fro. Look like Glenn Thurman. You know? Glenn Thurman. Glenn Thurman. You know what I'm talking about. So yeah, the culture and the truth, it moves and it mutates in order to save its own life. It's not just going to drown. It's not going to just fall to the bottom of the sea. It's going to adapt so it can stay alive. Just waiting and affirming and knowing that one day we'll find it. And it could be when you're 10 years old, or you're 8 years old, or it could be when you're 80 years old, or you're 30 years old, you're 40 years old. It really doesn't matter. Because just like, you know, our life expectancy is much longer nowadays. That also means that the middle of our life, those numbers have changed now. You know, like, even scientists have said, if for the average person nowadays, if they live beyond 65, chances are they'll live into their 80s. You know, so if you're 40 or 45, you might just be halfway through. You know, and remember that you now actually not only have more wisdom, but you have a greater capacity for learning. Now, of course, some things you're going to slip. Like, you might forget where your keys are sometimes, or stand in a room and like, what did I come in here for again? You know, those little type of things will happen. But don't retire your mind. Never retire your mind. And you older people, you know what I'm talking about, especially those of you who are taking care of older parents. You know, whenever we play our elders out like that, they then get that dementia, or Alzheimer's, or they die. When you keep them active and have them still babysitting and all that stuff like that in their 80s and 90s, they'll be right there, keeping up with you. You know, they can still talk and do things and move around and make their own meals and stuff like that. But when you retire them and send them in a corner and give them a countdown to die, then they'll speed up the process. What's the point of being here? What am I doing? And sometimes we don't realize that our culture doesn't depict that. That is why I named the Sadulu House the Sadulu House, because the Sadulu House in Congo culture that's the place where the elders teach the children. And in that culture, the elders teach children, while the parental age, they go out and work. But it gives the elders, and as well as older children who are not old enough to work yet, it gives them a sense of responsibility. I mean, it makes more sense if you think about it. Shouldn't your teachers be 60 plus? You know, if you really think about it, you know, how qualified are you to really teach in your 20s? Oh, I know. You're as qualified as your certification says. Yeah. Look at some of the things that they teach in public school now and how it's led to the breakdown and the destruction of society. They give you some ideas on stuff. Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to share that. I know this particular segment tonight was all over the place, but I just wanted to share a little bit of what happened. And again, I know it wasn't a new subject per se, because I did speak about ethos last night, but I thought it was important to speak about sometimes the signs and the things that happen and how ideas and thoughts come together, and how it's good not to ignore it. You know, because that could have been nothing. I could have made it nothing. But sometimes you see things that happen and you put them together and you're like, wait a minute, something's being said here. Someone's trying to tell me something, and seeing the Iliad sit on top of the pile and sitting down and watching that film, and just me mentioning Ethiopia last night, and ethos and correlating, and then remembering that passage from the Iliad, and some of the things that I know about how the Greeks viewed Ethiopians, was important. They said that they had frizzy hair and bronze skin, by the way, too. And they always said that they related the Ethiopians with the Kemites. They said they were the same people, because they would say that their hieroglyphs were the exact same way. Interesting, right? But then they depict them. You watch movies. What was that movie I talked about the other day? Exodus, with Christian Bale. Not a black Egyptian in sight. They had some that looked like slaves that they just had. They didn't even have any dialogue. They had to sit there quiet the whole time. They were just holding trays. Moti, sir? Moti? And that's all they were able to do. So this is interesting sometimes. So it's important to tap into that cosmic mind and try to take a peering at some of the dim recollections that are in the past, that are still alive, before those truths melt away so far away from what you can understand. They'll resurface, because nature ebb and flows. There's a recurrent of the cosmic stream. There's a recurrent of the cosmic mind. It comes and goes and comes and goes. But it's not going to ever wait for you. And in our arrogance, sometimes we think that it will just let you die, and it will work with the next generation. It will let many generations go until one is ready to receive that information, or if one is ready to act upon purpose. That is again why I am so against retirement. You see, because you may not realize that what you're supposed to do may be happening at 70. Because that's when you've accumulated and amassed enough wisdom. You all have heard me say that 100 times about even my own titles. Some of them I don't use. Well, I pretty much don't use any of them. Chief, people started calling me, not realizing I actually am a chief, and maybe that's what I was projecting. So I said, okay, I'll just go with that one. You know, but you listen to earlier shows, and say I'm you, yeah. You know, but part of the reason was the respect for my teachers, who were all older than I even am right now. Pretty much double my age. Most of them, most of my good ones, you know, were tipping on 100. Some of them, you know. So based on that, I said, well, you know, nah, I can't have the same title as you. No way. No way. You know, not with my little 4 gray hairs on my chin. I ain't got enough happening. You know, so just a reverence thing. But you know, it doesn't mean that I'm waiting to behave with that type of responsibility. I'm not waiting for anything. You know, I am seeking to finish my creation. I am creating the world, just like those who created Nile Valley civilization. And I'm not done creating that world. And I won't be done until I leave, whenever that is. But I'm going to keep creating until it's time to go. And with that, it is time to go. So I want to thank you all for listening to Foundational Friday this evening. And I want to urge you all to tune in this Sunday to Chief Speaks, where you will be able to call in and we can build and we can talk and we can chit chat and shoot chat. And you can call in at 347-945-7680. Again, 347-945-7680. This has been Chief Yuya. You have been listening to Foundational Friday on Enlightenment and Transformation. And if you're liking what you're hearing, please comment, share videos, and all that good stuff. If you desire to become a student, go to seduluhouse.com to sign up. For some reason, I kind of know the reason, but we're still getting a lot of phone calls of people saying, I want to join your classes, call me back. It's a little difficult to get back to everybody in a time that you may feel comfortable with, because there's a lot going on. But if you go to the sites, you can get a lot of the information on the classes, and you can sign up right there. Okay, so, and you can sign up at any time. You don't actually have to speak to someone first. But we understand, you know, some people still like that human touch. So, you know, we try to accommodate when we can in between everything we're trying to do as well. But all you have to do is go to Sedulu House, SADULUHOUSE.com. That is our school component. And for these shows, there's always, if you look in the description, we always make sure that we put a link to the classes, to the school right there. So even if you look in the show description, you could just click the link and that will take you to the school as well. All right. Even products too. People ask about Alpha Omega store.com. Alpha, ALPHA, Omega, OMEGA, STORE.com. So, you know, as time goes, we'll try to evolve to we're paying attention to the questions that people are asking, so that way we could present the links and stuff maybe in a more clear manner. I'm actually in the process now of having the sites decluttered. Some of the sites have too much information, and we're trying to make it more simple. So you go on, is a button, click, boom, you're in. As opposed to a lot of it. That's why we have so many different sites. So that way you can, whatever you look, if you look for Orisha stuff, go to OrishaReligion.com. If you're looking for the school stuff, SadoulaHouse.com. You know, boom, boom, boom. And you can just go to each one. So we're working on that. And hopefully that project will be closer to done towards the end of the year. Decluttering, getting rid of some services and stuff that just don't reflect where we're at anymore. But definitely for the school. And some people have even asked about buying book. They've called and said, I want to buy a book. Call me back. So if you go pretty much to any of the sites, but definitely alphaomegastore.com, you can get all of the products, from the videos to the books to the herbs to whatever else the sisters are managing up there. I don't know everything that's on there. I'd be lying if I said I did. I recommend products based on the rituals and stuff that I give people and stuff that I like to use, and I know that work. But sometimes they add things in based on rituals that I give that I forget to give, like certain things. You know, like they'll be like, oh, you gave this ritual, but you said they needed quartz crystals. Oh yeah, I put that on there. You know, so so there's a lot of good stuff up there, as well as the books and the videos and stuff like that. So you want to go to alphaomegastore.com, where you can get stuff. And again, it's not if you called and left a message, I'm not sharing this because it's anybody's upset, but just to let you know, so you don't always have to wait for a call back. You can get what you get. All right, but that has been our segment. Tongue is heavy again tonight. I have to put some effun on it. It's too heavy. But thank you for listening. I am Chief Yuya, and I will build with you all this Sunday on Chief Speaks. All right, until such time, Aquaba.
So self-actualization is actualizing the mission and idea of the soul. In order for new life to come, the old life has to rock. We've realized the self is actually that higher entity, that which controls God. You're supposed to birth yourself into these realities and then kill yourself out of those realities. That's the only escape from the matrix. It's that everything here is dying. Everything here is corrupted. Everything, even your beautiful sunset, is a corruption of the real self. What is your body to your soul? A vehicle of travel. What are the things that you do that are not for money? So we speak about the independent phenomenon